Hello ladies, welcome to Thankful Thriftiness and my kitchen. Today I'm going to be showing you two very easy methods of making homemade butter. Let's start with a little history lesson. Butter has been made for many years, and in the pioneer times, they used to tie animal skin bags to the back of their wagons, put cream in it, and as the wagon would bump along, the cream would slosh around, and when they'd stop for the afternoon, they'd have butter. People also used to make butter in different types of butter churns, including this one. You can still buy these today, either at antique shops or in a more modern form. I don't use this one because it's an actual antique and a little bit crummy if we put actual food in it. But it's quite neat. You can see the gears turn, turning the churn down there. Now yes, you can drive to the grocery store and buy any type of butter you like from a plethora of options, but I would equate making and eating homemade butter to the difference between store-bought milk and milk fresh from the cow. I don't know if you've had that, but that is the best comparison I can come up with. Homemade butter has a special extra flavor to it. I honestly don't know what it is, but every now and again I kind of get a hankering to make butter for the process of it and also for the end result. I started making butter about 8 years ago, and I used to make it quite frequently. I don't make it so much anymore because heavy whipping cream can be kind of expensive unless you have access to a cow, which I do not. However, around Thanksgiving time, I really enjoy fresh homemade butter on hot, homemade, secret family recipe rolls. No, I'm not sharing it, I'm sorry. The person who gave us the recipe is now in heaven, and I can't ask her permission to give it to you, so. Anyways, as I mentioned before, I'm giving you two methods today for how to make homemade butter. For the first method, the only special piece of equipment you're going to need is a quart mason jar. For both methods, you're also going to need a bowl of ice cold water, cheesecloth or another cloth to strain the butter out, and salt. To begin making butter in a mason jar, fill it about 1/4 to 1/3 of the way full of heavy whipping cream. Or if you have access to a cow, that's the cream that has risen to the top and you can just skim it off the milk. Do not fill it any more than halfway full. Trust me, I've done this many times and made that mistake many times, and it's not fun. You'll see later why that is so important. Then screw the lid on tightly and begin shaking your jar violently but carefully. You may need a break from this. It's quite the arm workout, so pass it off to the next person if you have to. After a while, you're going to notice that the cream has stopped sloshing around inside of the jar. What you have at this point is whipped cream, which is delicious in and of itself. When my family first made butter, when my sisters and I were really little, we stopped at this point because we thought this was as far as you could go at home, but no, you can take it all the way to the finish line and you can make actual butter. It takes a while, but once you start to see little air pockets in the cream, you know that it's soon going to start separating into buttermilk and butter. For a while, you're not going to feel anything moving in the jar. Just have patience, keep at it, shake it hard, and it will come. The butter will come. After a while of just seeing little pockets of air, you'll notice that the cream seems to all clump together and start flopping around inside the jar again. It's not butter yet. Keep going. You will know when the buttermilk separates from the butter because all of a sudden there will be liquid everywhere. For some reason, it likes to splash outside the jar too, so that's a surefire way to know. This is what it looks like when your butter is all ready for the next step of the process. I'm now going to move on to the second method of making butter because the way you finish up for both methods is pretty much the same, so I don't want you to have to hear it twice. You simply need either a blender or a stand-up mixer. I was going to show you the blender method, but I may have chosen the wrong blender and mine broke actually the other day when I was trying to make sauce right in the middle of it, so it's really kind of useless now. So I'm going to show you via my KitchenAid mixer, which I love so much. It's seriously wonderful. I use the whisk attachment. You could also use the paddle attachment. Basically, you just pour the cream in. Make sure not to pour in too much or else you're going to have a disaster on your hands once the buttermilk comes. Turn your mixer on its highest setting and just walk away. You do have to stop a few times to knock down the sides because it tends to like to throw the cream once it turns into whipped cream up against the sides and not bring it back down. But in the very end, it will bring it all down and incorporate it once the buttermilk comes. And that's it. Just make sure, especially that you're careful of not over churning it when you're using your mixer, or else it will turn into more of a liquid form, and it's very hard to make butter after that point. So here's how you finish up your butter, whichever method you've chosen to use. Strain off the buttermilk and save it for later. You cannot use this buttermilk in recipes that call for buttermilk because the buttermilk called for in recipes is from, I believe, cultured buttermilk. So there are ways to culture your cream before you make butter. I choose not to. My mom liked it better. I didn't like the taste very much. Anyways, just know that you cannot use this as a substitute for buttermilk in recipes, but it's very delicious to drink. Then take your golden lumps of butter and submerge them in ice cold water. Let your butter sit in the ice cold water for a little while to make sure it's nice and firm before you move on to the next part, which is kneading the butter. You can use a spoon. I like to use my hands just to get in there for some reason. Don't ask me why. Basically, you're trying to rinse the butter. You're going to have to change the water several times. Knead the butter with your hands or your spoon until the water turns very milky. Then pour off the milky water and add fresh water. Continue this until your water runs clear. It is super important for your butter to last a while for you to make sure that all the buttermilk is out of there. It causes the butter to spoil very quickly, so I will warn you, take this step very seriously and make sure that the water is clear. Then using a cheesecloth, I didn't have a cheesecloth, I just used a random cloth I have that worked. Squeeze any excess moisture, whether that be buttermilk or water, out of your butter. Once it's all dry, it's ready for salting or seasoning or whatever you'd like to do with it. You could easily throw honey in at this point, spices, herbs, whatever you like. I like just plain salt, so that's what I did. And of course, you have to test your butter to make sure it's well seasoned, right? Yeah, no, seriously, you should check that. But that's always the fun part of butter making. Finally, it's time to form your butter. I just like to roll mine up in the saran wrap. I've also used butter molds or even candy molds in the past, which is super fun, especially for Thanksgiving time. You can eat your butter now or allow it to set up longer in the fridge. It's up to you. I would not recommend leaving homemade butter out on the countertop because you don't know for sure if all the buttermilk's out like you do with store-bought butter. So there you have it. Now you know how to make butter in your own kitchen. I think it's a pretty awesome skill to have. The butter is delicious and it's a super fun activity to do with children, and it's also educational. So for homeschoolers out there, it could be your science for the day. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about butter making. I'm not an expert, but I will do my best to help you or point you in the right direction. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Have a wonderful rest of your day and happy butter making.